Here we are back again with more for you about how to get your horse to jump safely and confidently. I hope you enjoyed the last video and maybe even took your horse out to have a go. How did you get on, I wonder? Anyways, in response to my last video, some of you picked me up on my point that free work with horses, of course, does carry some level of risk of injury because you don't have as much control over your horse as you might have with a lunge line or lead rope. It's always good to remember, however well trained or experienced your horses or you are, and however much you think you're best buddies with your horse, they are still independent thinking animals who can have a grumpy day or be distracted by some headache or tummy ache or get frightened by some imaginary or real monster behind a tree. So, like I said in my last video, if there's any doubt and to be safe, you should really consider wearing a helmet and gloves and maybe even a body protector when working with horses. I don't think I have to mention long trousers and solid ankle-high boots as the very basic. And if you're a complete beginner with horses, please don't do this without the company and guidance from a more experienced person. Now I've continued to work with my lot here since the filming of the last video, and I gave them some more tasks to do which I want to share with you today. First, let me show you this simple but effective exercise. I laid the ground poles much closer together, just a step and a half apart. Some call this layout trotting poles. The horse can trot over them without taking extra steps in between. This means there's no time to adjust their legs. They really have to space their steps evenly and carefully, not to get into an awful stumble. But it really makes them aware of their own feet and gets them to lift those hoofs carefully. If your horse is still not very confident with their leg movements and prone to stumble over poles, try this exercise at walk first so that he can have a good look, then eventually speed up into a trot. The layout of the poles doesn't really work for canter, although mine get very enthusiastic sometimes and try to attempt this with mixed results. Another exercise I've been doing is to build a more versatile course where the jumps are not all in line and there are different options for each jump. This is fun to design, even with the few poles and barrels I have. And it is even more fun to watch the horses work in it, because you can see how they gear up for that big jump to show themselves off to you, or how they find that tiny gap between jumps to avoid having to do much. While they are working in this course, I constantly adjust the jumps in height and position and let them follow each other or let them have a go on their own. Sometimes they try to find the easy way around jumps. Sometimes they, or should I say Henry, knocks the poles down for an easier step over. But sometimes they also choose, without me pressurizing them at all, the more challenging option and want to take the big jump. This free jumping is also a great opportunity to watch how the horses react to each other and communicate. They seem to motivate each other to give their best, but also to take it easier and safer sometimes. That's okay. After all, this is free jumping, where we want to encourage the horse to express himself by moving over jumps, but also around them. Most of it is quite calm and not all that exciting to anyone watching. What happens is more subtle, and obvious results only come with time. It's the slow building of confidence and experience. Next time, I will introduce some ridden exercises. So in the meantime, I want to leave you with some food for thought. When I started mulling over my jumping with Flora, I also started to think more carefully about my riding style and posture. With anxiety and worry, all sorts of strange habits can creep in. I noticed that in anticipation of a jump, I would sometimes tense up around my shoulders and arms, the complete opposite of what you should do really. Or I would look down onto the ground alongside the horse's shoulder rather than up and over the jump. Little things, but they can make it that bit harder for the horse to do their part of the job, which is a rhythmic approach to the jump, balanced, coordinated takeoff and landing.
Well done, Winnie. Oh, I know. It's hard work.
So here was a challenge for me to be more attentive and conscious about how I am up there on the horse and how this might interfere with what the horse is trying to do for me and with me. How it might actually make it harder for the horse to move with cadence. In other words, good rhythm, balance and impulsion. And here's what I started doing, maybe once, twice a week. Leave all poles and jumps aside and just ride around and walk, trot and canter and observe my body carefully. Am I tense in any places? Do I feel out of balance or wobbly? It might sound silly, but it actually does help to recall all those instructions by my riding instructor when I was young, standing in the centre of the arena yelling at us riders, Fersen runter, Schultern zurück, Ellbogen rein, heels down, shoulders back, elbows in and whatnot. I realise more than ever that they actually make sense when you let your body fall into this posture without tightness and with much flexibility, because it helps you stay in a stable, balanced position on your horse in all paces without impacting on the horse's movement too much. So here's to mindful riding, folks, and we get started with some ridden pole exercises in my next video. Thanks for watching and see you soon.